Sportageous. Sport gets smarter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sportageous Cast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you're tuning in from to hear sports stories from the experts. Our guest today is a communication expert and the founder of The Digital Athlete, a consultancy which aims to educate and empower athletes in harnessing social media to build a resilient online profile, manage their reputation, and protect mental health. Carly Post. Welcome to the show, Carly.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the opportunity.
Let's look. It's great to have you here, Carly. And before we get into the digital athlete and everything that you've done in sports yourself, tell me a little bit about you. How you got started on this journey. You've obviously competed in quite a few sports as well. So just run me through a little bit of that.
Sure. Well, I come from a pretty big sporting family, and we've all played sport pretty much from the time that we could walk. Unfortunately, I never made it to elite because I really just wasn't committed enough. I hated going to training. But I basically grew up playing basketball, netball, lacrosse, and then later in life, I started playing women's football. But when I was at school, I was doing everything from athletics to swimming to softball. Any sport that I could get into, I was willing to try. And I guess for me, not just playing the sports, but I've pretty much been involved at every level, from coaching and team management to even officiating. And most recently, I joined the board of Lacrosse Australia. So with my experience, I guess, I've seen, really importantly, I've seen how social media has impacted sporting culture across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring up, your work at joining the board with Lacrosse Australia. Tell me a little bit about lacrosse in Australia. It's not really a sport that, encapsulates the visions of the masses, but it is quite popular in the US. So I'd love to hear a little bit about lacrosse and what's going on here in Australia, because I actually don't know anything.
Well, that's last week or the week before it was, the sport of lacrosse actually received full recognition from the International Olympics Committee. So there's a really good chance that we will become an Olympic sport again. We actually were an Olympic sport a long time ago, and we are looking to get reintroduced. So I think the plan is hopefully 2028, maybe 2032 in Brisbane, which would be awesome. So lacrosse, yeah, it is very concentrated in small areas around Australia. I grew up in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and it's really big there in Altona, Williamstown, Footscray, that kind of area. And for me, having grown up playing netball and basketball, it was so different, with the stick and the ball. And I mean, the skills are very transferable from sports like basketball. And basically, they like to recruit athletes with big engines, and they basically put a stick in your hands and off you go. So considering how small a community lacrosse is in Australia, we actually really do punch above our weight on the international stage, which is really exciting. So our women, we actually won the World Cup in 1986 and in 2005, defeating the US both times on US soil. And that's they are the only two times that the US hasn't won. The Women's World Cup is actually in Baltimore next year. It's been pushed out 12 months, and immediately after the World Cup, we will go to the World Games in Birmingham, Alabama, which is basically an opportunity to showcase the sport and really push to be included in the Olympics.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I had no idea that we've got 2 World Cup titles. So that's amazing. We'll have to check it out and keep an eye out on what's happening. I'll just get in touch with you and to find out what's happening in the world of lacrosse. So Carly, the digital athlete, what is it? Obviously, you said that social media, the importance of social media in the life of an athlete, both during and post-career. What do you do? Where did the idea come from? Lay it all out.
Okay, so I actually spend a lot of time in the US attending conferences and other bits and pieces. I actually own a communications agency. And I got the idea to start the Digital Athlete after I noticed a bit of a gap in the market between, a gap for actual education. So my whole philosophy is that, there's a huge difference between an athlete receiving a code of conduct and receiving an actual education, which really highlights the real ramifications of their online activity. And I mean, if you look in the media, you look on social media, there are literally hundreds of career-ending, reputation-ruining case studies of, everything from kids in high school through to professional athletes and even those in post-retirement. And you can really see that, a lot of it is not actually malicious. It's through a lack of understanding of those ramifications. So what I'm really passionate about is educating and empowering athletes and students. And from a young age, it's really important that kids understand that what they post now will affect them later in life. And there are numerous case studies that show athletes, in America, for an example is Kyler Murray. He won the Heisman Trophy out of Oklahoma. And the night that he, at the awards ceremony to step up and receive his award, someone had trawled back through his social media and found something that he'd posted. It was either homophobic or misogynistic when he was 14 or 15. And they've brought it back to light on, one of the biggest nights of his career. So it's not just important that kids and adults understand what they're posting now, but also what they post when they're younger. So I'm all about actually educating and empowering students and athletes to use social media, not just to protect themselves, protect their reputation. I guess part of recruiting process now is there's a huge focus on character and culture. And sometimes athletes that are maybe a lot more talented, but they're doing the wrong thing on social media, they're less likely to get picked over someone who is doing the right thing. So there's all these different factors that come into play. And basically, I want athletes to put themselves in the best position possible off the field, I guess, if they are looking to, forge a career, whether that's to college or whether that's elite. Yeah.
Wow. So that's a very interesting point, because we see it with athletes all the time where, they might have said something on social media. Obviously, they were young, naive, didn't really I would actually say couldn't really form an opinion on things at that age, being so young. Yet now, when they're at the peak of their career or if they've been successful, they're facing the ramifications of that. And social media obviously plays that key role. But is that the only side of things that you work on? Or because from what I understand that, social media, or rather the use of or having that digital awareness, is integral to athletes in terms of setting up sponsorships, branding opportunities, and also sort of enabling them to set up their post-athlete careers. So have them ready to go, once they're done playing their sport. Is that what are your views on that? And is that something that the digital athlete also works on?
Yeah, so the education piece is part of it, around, I guess, building and nurturing a resilient online profile, managing your reputation, but also there is the opportunities around, essentially monetizing your influence and your popularity. And if you do have a bit of a personality, you can really build a profile that you can use as an asset. So, like when you're building your brand, I guess it's really hard because you actually have some athletes who are actively trying to work to build a brand that they can monetize. We see a lot of athletes that they have to self-fund to get themselves around. I've worked with a lot of golfers, a lot of track athletes. They don't get any money if they often don't get any money if they don't win, or, they have to self-fund to get. So it almost becomes a way of actually being able to fund their career. But other people, they're almost thrust into the spotlight, and then all of a sudden they've got all of these eyeballs on them. So it's about how do they harness them to create opportunities for themselves. So we definitely work with athletes around brand building. So my background is actually in public relations. So I guess where I try and set myself apart from some of these agents and marketing managers is I'm interested in keeping my athletes human, and telling a story, not just trying to sell stuff. And I think one of the things that we're noticing, and especially with the introduction of the legislation around name, image, and likeness for college sports, is that there is a lack of education, and these athletes are like, I'll take any money I can get. Like, I don't care who I work with, rather than actually thinking about the brands that they want to work with, and making sure that their values align with those brands, and making sure that it's actually setting them up for success, not potentially putting them back with future deals because they've just worked with everyone. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And you also mentioned about setting yourself up for post career. And that is really key because, in some of the sports like football, American football, where one big hit can end your career, we are seeing so many athletes who have been told, they were born to play football. They were born with a football in their hands. All of a sudden their career ends and they don't know themselves other than a football player. So they're having this identity crisis. So another part of what we do at the Digital Athlete is, aside from the brand building and the social media education, is also about trying to connect athletes with opportunities around career advancement, but also around community impact. We're actually finding that athletes are able to play better and thrive and almost have an outlet when they are actually able to find some kind of purposeful or meaningful work outside of their sport. And typically, a lot of big sporting organizations will actually have mandatory appearances and things that they need their players to do. But often that's not something that the player has kind of said that they were interested in. So we're trying to empower our athletes to find something that, it might be volunteering at a local prison, or it might be going back into their community to run a clinic, something that they're passionate about, not just something that their organization has essentially put onto them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really interesting. So it's almost like a holistic approach around that digital side of things, not just the socials, not just protecting yourself in the sense of what you may have said before, but also getting you out there, working towards your future, everything. And I love the two things you said, keeping it about the human and creating a story, because that's exactly what we do at Sportageous in a different space. So it's always about the human element of sporting stories that we share on our platform. 100%. So I think that is fantastic. Yeah.
And I'll just say on that, I think in this day and age, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, but their bullshit radars have never been sharper. Yeah. People can actually smell if you're being inauthentic or ingenuine from a mile away, and they will disengage. The content that we find from athletes that works the best is when they are very, open and honest and raw. And, the Olympics, it has just been so amazing for me, having spent so much time in lockdown. The incredible, human stories that have come out of that have been incredible. So many great lessons.
Absolutely. And when we talk about the rawness of athletes, I think we're seeing more and more of that through some of the bigger media channels like Netflix and Amazon in particular, with all their documentaries around sport that they're doing, and that behind the scenes access. Like I know that Amazon did the series about the Aussie cricket team, the Test. And that was fantastic. And they've done a lot of them in soccer and NFL as well.
The Last Dance, that was, that was perfect timing, their release during COVID. That couldn't have gone better. And that was great. Like that was really, humanized Michael Jordan, like one of the greatest sports stars. No one was ever really able to get too close to him. And that just really painted him in a really incredible light, showed what kind of leader he was and what kind of teammate he was. I thought that was amazing.
Absolutely. And he wasn't anything like I saw him in Space Jam growing up. So
you feel a little bit ripped off, don't you?
That's right. Although I will say The Last Dance, I forget his name right now. It's not coming to mind. But our Aussie player in that Chicago Bulls team,
Luke Longley.
Yes, he wasn't even there.
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of controversy about why he was omitted, but I think there was a specific reason, and also I think he's about to release something of his own. So it'll be interesting to see kind of that other story. It'll be interesting.
That will be, absolutely, it will be interesting. So Carly, coming back to the Digital Athlete, what are, I guess, some of the things that you sort of you have seen with like examples of the athletes that you've worked with, both all the way from elite all the way down to the grassroots level, college athletes included. Once they sit down or they go through the process and learn from you guys over at the Digital Athlete, how different is their understanding? What are they able to sort of understand or also learn from it and then take away and apply when they go in to do their own thing?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, athletes, and especially those who are already on a pathway to elite, are given so many education sessions, and it just ends up being like information overload, one more thing that they have to do. And you can see a lot of the time when, I'm coming into a session or I'm giving a Zoom session, you can all see them going, oh, another session. But what I try to do with my presentations in particular, and I guess it goes through all the way to one-on-one consulting, is I try and not tell anyone what to do, because I found that that's what a lot of athletes are getting. They rather than an actual education, they're being told, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. It's kind of like a scare tactic. So I just try and give them, I guess, concepts and ideas to think about, and I illustrate them with really robust case studies. And, I use really high profile athletes or really high profile controversies to explain what I'm talking about. And you can actually see them sitting there and the light bulbs going off and going, oh, wow. It's actually really terrifying how many, not just kids, but how many adults don't know that, what you post on social media, even if you delete it, it's still permanent and still forms part of your digital footprint. How many kids don't know that it's actually illegal to take a photo of someone in the locker room, let alone share it on social media? There's so many things that we think are common sense and they're actually not. And, there's even been quite a few case studies this year of, high profile athletes or athletes in retirement, or even the parents of high profile athletes who have become so emotionally overwhelmed, at an instance that they vent on social media. And that, in my head, I'm going, on what planet is it a good place to vent on social media? But sometimes when the emotions are charged and the adrenaline's pumping, it's quite cathartic to type something out on social media. And so the advice that I actually give to anyone who is thinking, kids who haven't been picked for teams or didn't get on the court, or, they're having issues with their coach or whatever, I say, you can get on social media and you can type out the post, but you have to save it as a draft and you have to wait 24 hours before you can actually post it. And then hopefully all those emotions have subsided and you're not going to do something that you regret. So I guess it's really just about opening their mind to things. And, when you are showing them what has happened to really high profile stars, like as an example, LeBron James got in trouble about 12 months ago because he posted some rap lyrics that referenced something that was considered racist. I think it was like Jewish money or something. So Bron's just, some lyrics that he vibed with. And, how easy is it for kids and even, athletes to post something that they're not actually understanding how it could be misconstrued or how it could be taken? We actually live in a very sensitive world, and, it's oftentimes there's the cons far outweigh the pros of posting on social media. And a prime example of that is Israel Folau. I use him as a bit of a case study. And again, I always say, I'm not saying whether what he posted or his views are right or wrong. I believe in free speech. And I think the whole issue was not around what he was saying, but the fact that it was to the exclusion of others when he has signed a code of conduct with Rugby Australia, an inclusive organisation, who said that he can't do that. So he's contravened, not to mention all the other issues with being a role model and what that could be for, that community. So you see kids going, well, I actually say to them, Israel, like, he's obviously very, that's his opinion, but what was he actually gaining from posting that on social media? Could he not just have those conversations around the dinner table with his family when, what was he actually going to gain from posting that on social media? So they're the types of things that we talk about and try and educate our kids about, just making better decisions and thinking, how could this affect me in the future? Yeah,
that's fascinating. And I think of it as well on the flip side. I always think of, there's what's his name? Soccer player for Liverpool, Sadio Mane, and his social media. I don't even think he really runs it, but every story that gets out about him is how he's helping people in Senegal. And that's such a, it's just a complete reversal of what could go wrong if, you're doing things the way you want to do and they are right and you believe them to be right and you don't necessarily talk about them. That's right. It will work out. And if, you want it to get out, it will get out some way or the other. Yeah.
Well, you look at Nick Kyrgios. I mean, and I have people asking me all the time, why would anyone want to sponsor him when he's always in the media for behaving like a brat? And I said, well, he might be behaving like a brat, but the reality is he's always in the media and his sponsor's always front and center, So that's the thing. If you don't actually care about the ramifications, that's fine. And that's why I try and say to people, it's not about me saying that this is right or wrong. It's about, saying this is what could potentially happen. So like another really good example of that is Nick Bosa. So he was out of Ohio State and got drafted to the 49ers. Mm-hmm. But in the lead up to draft day, he was posting on social media that Colin Kaepernick is a clown, and he was liking all of these pro-Trump tweets. And then he gets drafted to the 49ers and becomes a teammate of Colin Kaepernick, And then in his first year as a rookie, he was lucky enough to go to the Super Bowl. But at the, in Miami at the press conferences, instead of asking about his on-field performance, they're all asking about his social media usage and being pro-Trump and, all these controversies. So it actually becomes a real distraction and actually takes away from what the real focus is, which is, winning a Super Bowl. So,
yeah. So there are lots of stories we can obviously talk about, Carly, and I would love to perhaps off screen at some point, hopefully. But just to wrap things up here, what's coming up on the digital athlete front? What do you have on the radar? Considering all things become normal if they can, but what you sort of have, you talked about the US as well and all of that. So I just love to know where you're sort of headed. And just before that, for everyone watching and listening, be sure to go and follow the Digital Athlete. Their social media links will be in the description or caption below wherever you are. So be sure to check their social media pages out and get in touch with Carly if you think, there's something that you guys could do together. But Carly, yes, over to you.
So yes, you're right. I do have plans to eventually move to the US. I really do want to work in college sports. And it's funny because I've built up the Digital Athlete, but I think when I move to the US, I actually do want to work at a university. I'm a real loyal and passionate person. I kind of want to become part of the fabric of a school and its culture and its family, as opposed to consult to a bunch of schools. So I've kind of got to work out what I want to do there. But in the meantime, I'm just really focused on, particularly sort of the 14 to 18 cohort. So I'm doing a lot of work with schools and local sports academies. And I guess for me, the reason that I'm kind of honing in on that is, COVID has really added this layer of complexity, and social media was already having an enormous impact on mental health, and COVID has just exacerbated that. So for me at the moment, I'm just really trying to provide education and support where I can. Very sadly, here in Geelong, last year, sort of at the start of COVID, I think there was 8 suicides, which is so awful. And a lot of those kids that unfortunately took their lives were connected to sport and were missing sport. So for me, and I mean, I don't know if I can talk all day, but the whole thing with Majak Dor, he's just released his memoir, but sort of everything that he went through. There's lots of there's just so much. Social media is just having such a profound impact on mental health of our athletes. So I'm just really trying to hone in that and provide support there, until which point I can get over to the US and potentially work in college sports.
Yeah, look, and it's very, very important work. I think the fact that it's being recognized more and more now, we've seen that in the cricket here as well over the last couple of years, how much mental health is taking center stage, and it's only likely to continue to grow, the importance of it within sport and the need to sort of recognize it. And also for the people watching and supporting their, role models, that they are also human and they are vulnerable and they can slip up as well. You're not, it's not a gladiator battle in ancient Rome. That's not what's happening here. But look, Carly, great to have you on the show and wish you all the best. And even with the work that you're doing at the Digital Athlete, for everyone watching and listening, be sure to follow the Digital Athlete on social media. The links will be in the description or caption below, wherever you're watching or listening. Carly, thank you so much. And we will definitely continue to be in touch.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a nice night. See ya.